When trust shatters at the hands of those you hold dearest, the heart grapples with an unbearable void. How do you rebuild a life when love and family betray you in the cruelest way? My name's Lukas, I'm 34, and I live in a small town just outside Boise, Idaho. I'm a carpenter, been shaping wood into furniture, tables, bookshelves, custom cabinets, since I was 18. There's a quiet satisfaction in it. Taking something rough and raw and making it smooth, functional, even beautiful. You measure twice, cut once, and trust the process. That's how I approached my life. Deliberate, steady, building something I could rely on, until it all came undone. I met Elise 3 years ago at a local bakery, where she was sketching on a napkin between sips of tea. She was 31, a graphic designer who left Amsterdam for a quieter life in Idaho. Her accent was soft, her laugh bright. And she had this way of making even small moments feel vivid. We talked for hours that day about art, travel, and my love for crafting wood. She admired the grain patterns in my work. I was captivated by her creativity. The way she'd weave stories into her designs. Last autumn, I proposed on a frost-covered hill at dawn, the mountains framing us. She said yes, her eyes shining, and we started planning a modest wedding for next summer. My older brother, Jonas, was my best man. He's 37, a real estate agent with a sharp smile and a talent for winning people over. Growing up, we were thick as thieves. Despite our differences, I was the introspective one, happiest in the workshop. Jonas was the charmer, always chasing bigger deals, flashier cars, a louder life. He'd pull me out of scrapes, like the time I got stuck hitchhiking after a concert, and I'd help him dodge Mom's wrath when he missed curfew. Sure, he could be self-centered, but I chalked it up to his ambition. When I shared the engagement news, he grinned wide, clapping my shoulder. "Lukas, you nailed it. Elise is special." I trusted him without question. Life felt like it was falling into place. I was working overtime, saving for the wedding and dreaming of a small house where Elise could have a studio flooded with light. I was carving a walnut keepsake box for her as a surprise. Etching delicate vines along the edges, Elise was designing our invitations, her desk a mess of color swatches and mock-ups. Jonas was around often, tossing out ideas for the bachelor party at family dinners, maybe a fishing trip or a night of poker. Mom was all ready, knitting baby blankets, half joking, and Dad kept bragging about his boy settling down. At night, I'd lie awake, imagining our future. Elise painting in the mornings, me sanding wood in the yard, maybe kids someday, their laughter filling the house. But there were signs, and I missed them. About 3 months ago, Elise started pulling away. She'd work late, claiming tight deadlines for freelance projects. Her phone was always locked, and she'd angle it away when I sat close. I told myself it was wedding stress. Maybe nerves about moving forward. Jonas was acting strange too, less talkative, his usual swagger muted. I'd catch him glancing at Elise during barbecues, their eyes lingering a second too long, but I brushed it off. They were probably planning some surprise. I thought, why would I doubt the two people I loved most? Then, one night, it all unraveled. I got home early from a job, found Elise on the couch, her face streaked with tears. My chest tightened. "What's happened?" I asked, sitting beside her. She wouldn't look at me, her hands twisting in her lap. "Lukas, I've done something terrible," she said, her voice barely audible. I braced for anything: money troubles, doubts about us, maybe a family crisis back in the Netherlands. But not this. She confessed she'd slept with Jonas, my brother, after a family barbecue a month ago, when I'd gone to bed early, exhausted. They'd been texting secretly for months, hiding it all. The words hit like a sledgehammer. I sat there, frozen, as she sobbed apologies. My mind couldn't catch up. My fiancé, my brother, my whole world collapsing. I didn't shout or cry. I just stood, grabbed my jacket, and walked out in my truck. I drove to a deserted field, the stars cold above. How do you piece together a life when the foundation's been ripped away? That night in my truck, parked in the middle of nowhere, I couldn't think straight. The stars were out, sharp and cold, but they didn't offer any answers. Elise's words kept looping in my head. I slept with Jonas Dash, my fiancé, my brother. It was like someone had taken a chisel to my life and split it clean in two. I wanted to scream, to drive back and demand answers, but my body wouldn't move. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the weight crushing my chest. I don't know how long I stayed there. Hours, maybe. My phone buzzed with texts from Elise, then calls, but I let them pile up. Jonas tried calling too, twice, but I couldn't even look at his name on the screen. What could he say? Sorry I stabbed you in the back? I turned the phone off and tossed it on the passenger seat. The silence was better, but it didn't stop the questions. When did it start? Why? Was everything I thought we had a lie? By dawn, my eyes were burning, and my throat felt raw. Though I hadn't cried, I drove back to town, not to our apartment, but to my workshop, a rented garage on the edge of town. It's my sanctuary, smells of sawdust and varnish, tools lined up just so. I sat on a stool, staring at the half-finished walnut box I'd been carving for Elise. Those vines I'd etched for her looked mocking now, like they were strangling the wood instead of decorating it. I wanted to smash it, but I just ran my fingers over the grain, wondering how I'd been so blind. I kept replaying the barbecue she'd mentioned. It was at Mom's place, a warm September evening. I'd been tired from a long week, helping a client with a custom staircase. I'd eaten a burger, laughed with Dad about his fishing stories, and gone to bed early in the guest room. Elise and Jonas had stayed up with the others, drinking around the fire pit. I hadn't thought twice about it. They were family, but now I could see it. Her lingering smiles, his too casual arm around her chair. Had anyone else noticed? Had I been the only idiot there? I couldn't face going home, so I crashed on the cot in the workshop's back room. Sleep didn't come, just more memories I couldn't trust anymore. Elise laughing at Jonas's dumb jokes, him offering to pick her up when her car broke down last spring. The way she'd started staying late at her studio, always with some excuse. I felt like a fool, piecing together clues I'd ignored. My stomach churned, not just with anger but with shame. How do you miss something like that? By noon, I had to do something or I'd lose it. I drove to a diner, the kind where nobody asks questions, and sat in a corner booth, nursing a coffee. I texted Elise one line: I need space, don't call. Then I blocked her number. It felt cold, final. But I couldn't hear her voice without falling apart. Jonas was next. I didn't text him, just blocked him too. I wasn't ready for his excuses, his charm, not yet. The hardest part was thinking about Mom and Dad. They'd been so happy about the wedding, already treating Elise like a daughter. How was I supposed to tell them? Mom would cry, try to fix it. Dad would probably just go quiet, like he does when he's hurt. And what about family dinners, holidays? Jonas was my brother, but he'd crossed a line I didn't know how to come back from. I kept imagining his face, that smug grin he'd flash when he got away with something. Did he think he'd get away with this? I spent the rest of the day in the workshop, sanding a table I'd been putting off. The rhythm usually calms me, but not now. Every stroke felt like I was trying to sand away the ache in my chest. I kept thinking about the future I'd lost, not just Elise, but the trust I'd had in Jonas and family. By evening, I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment with her. I needed a plan, a way to keep moving forward when everything felt broken. But where do you even start when the people you loved most leave you with nothing? I stayed in the workshop for 2 days, sleeping on that creaky cot, surrounded by sawdust and half-finished projects. The walnut box for Elise sat on the workbench, mocking me every time I glanced at it. I couldn't touch it, but I couldn't throw it out either. It was like a ghost of the life I thought I'd have. My phone stayed off, and I didn't dare check it. I knew Elise would be texting apologies, maybe crying voicemails, and Jonas, God knows what he'd say. I wasn't ready to hear either of them. The silence in the workshop was loud enough, filled with my own thoughts tearing me apart. By the third morning, I was a mess, unshowered, living off vending machine snacks, my hands shaky from too much coffee. I kept replaying Elise's confession, her voice breaking as she said, I slept with Jonas Dash. It wasn't just the act that gutted me. It was the months of lies, secret texts, stolen glances, all while I was planning our wedding, dreaming of our kids, and Jonas, my own brother, the guy who'd taught me how to throw a punch, who'd promised to stand by me at the altar. How do you betray someone like that? I felt like I didn't know either of them anymore. I couldn't hide forever, though. My crew was expecting me on a job, a kitchen remodel for a nice couple in town. I dragged myself to the site, hoping work would drown out the noise in my head. My buddy Mike, who's been on my crew for years, took one look at me and asked what was wrong. I didn't want to talk, but he wouldn't let it go, so I mumbled something about trouble with Elise. He didn't push, just handed me a hammer and said, "Swing hard. Man, it helps." So I did, pounding nails like I could hammer the pain away. It didn't work, but it kept me moving. That afternoon, I went to the apartment to grab some clothes. Elise wasn't there, thank God. But her stuff was everywhere. Her sketch pads, her coffee mug with the chipped handle, her scarf on the couch. I stuffed a duffel with my things and left a note. "Staying at the workshop, don't contact me." I didn't know if it was cowardice or self-preservation, but I couldn't face her. Not yet. Driving back, I passed Mom's house, and my chest tightened. She'd called once, left a voicemail I hadn't listened to. I knew I'd have to tell her soon, but the thought of saying it out loud, "Jonas and Elise betrayed me," made me feel sick. Back at the workshop, I tried to focus on a new project, a bookshelf for a client. But every cut I made was sloppy, every measurement off. My hands, usually so steady, were betraying me too. I sat down, staring at the wood, and let myself feel it. The anger, the hurt, the shame. I'd trusted them completely, built my whole world around them. Now I was sleeping on a cot, avoiding my own home. I wondered if Elise was sorry, or if she was with Jonas now, planning some new life while I was stuck in the wreckage of the old one. By evening, I couldn't take the isolation anymore. I drove to a bar on the edge of town, not to drink, but to be around noise, people, anything to drown out my thoughts. I sat in a corner, sipping a soda, watching strangers laugh and argue. A guy at the bar was telling a story about his ex, and I caught myself listening, wondering if he'd been through something like this. Did he rebuild? Did he forgive? I didn't know if I could do either, but as I sat there, I realized I needed to face this. Maybe not Elise or Jonas yet, but myself. I had to figure out who I was without them. Without the future I'd planned, it felt impossible, but sitting still wasn't an option anymore. The next morning, I woke up on the cot with a crick in my neck and a headache that felt like a hangover, even though I hadn't touched a drop. The workshop was cold, the kind of damp chill that seeps into your bones. I made coffee with the ancient machine in the corner, staring at the steam like it might tell me what to do next. I couldn't keep hiding here, but going back to the apartment felt like walking into a trap. Elise's note was probably waiting, some tear-stained plea, and I wasn't ready to read it. Jonas, too. I could imagine him calling, all smooth apologies, like he could talk his way out of this. I decided to call Mom, not to tell her everything, not yet, but to hear her voice. She picked up on the second ring, her tone warm but worried. "Lukas, where have you been?" "Elise said you're not home." I froze. Elise had talked to her? I mumbled something about a big job keeping me busy, said I was crashing at the workshop. Mom didn't buy it. She never does. "You sound off. Honey, come over for dinner tonight, just you and me." I wanted to say no, but the thought of her cooking, her quiet way of knowing when I was hurting, pulled me in. I agreed. Work that day was brutal. I was distracted, measuring wrong, dropping tools. Mike noticed again but kept quiet, just handed me a water bottle and pointed me to the next task. I was grateful for his silence. By late afternoon, I drove to Mom's. My stomach knotted. Her house smelled like rosemary and roasted chicken, like every Sunday dinner growing up. She hugged me tight, her eyes searching mine, but she didn't pry. We ate mostly in silence, her glancing at me like she was waiting for me to crack. Finally, over coffee, I broke. "Mom, Elise and I are done," I said, voice flat. Her face fell, but I couldn't say more. Not about Jonas, not yet. She reached for my hand. "What happened, Lukas?" I shook my head, said it was complicated. She didn't push, just said, "You're strong. You'll get through this." But I didn't feel strong. I felt like a table with a broken leg, ready to collapse. Driving back to the workshop, I thought about Jonas. Had he told Mom anything? Was he at his fancy condo, acting like nothing happened? The anger was back, hot and sharp, but underneath it was something worse, grief. I missed my brother, the one I thought I knew. The next day, I got a text from Dad. "Heard you're at the workshop. Need to talk." I didn't reply. Dad's not big on words. He'd probably just sit there, offer me a beer, and say something gruff about moving on, but I wasn't ready for that either. Instead, I threw myself into work, finishing that bookshelf, It was imperfect, joints a little loose, finish uneven. But it was done. It felt like a small victory, proof I could still make something out of nothing. Then Elise showed up. I was sweeping sawdust when I heard the door creak. She stood there, eyes red, wearing my old flannel. "Lukas, please," she said. I wanted to yell, to throw her out, but my voice stayed calm. "Why are you here?" She started crying, saying she didn't know why it happened, that she loved me. Loved me? After months of lying? I told her to leave, my hand shaking. She begged for a chance to explain, but I couldn't listen. Not now, maybe not ever. After she left, I sat on the floor, head in my hands. I kept seeing her face, Jonas's too, and the life we were supposed to have. I thought about the wedding, the house, the kids we'd talked about, all gone. But sitting there, I realized something. I was still here. Broken, yeah, but not done. I didn't know how to move forward, but I knew I had to try. Maybe not for Elise, or Jonas, or even Mom and Dad, but for me, for the guy who could still build something out of broken pieces. The days blurred after Elise's visit. I stayed in the workshop, living like a hermit, surrounded by tools and with shavings. Sleep was spotty. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see her crying or Jonas's smug face, and I'd jolt awake, heart racing. I started leaving my phone on, not to check messages, but because the silence was starting to feel like a cage. There were dozens of texts, mostly Elise, a few from Jonas, even one from Mike asking if I was okay. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't ready to let their words back into my head. Work became my lifeline. I took on extra jobs, anything to keep my hands busy. A client wanted a custom dining table, another needed porch railings. I poured myself into the details, measuring, cutting, sanding until my arms ached. It wasn't healing. Not exactly, but it was something to hold on to. Mike started checking in more, bringing me sandwiches, joking about my bachelor pad and the workshop. I forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. He didn't know the whole story, and I wasn't sure I could tell him without breaking down. A week later, I ran into Dad at the hardware store. I was buying sandpaper when he appeared in the aisle, cart full of paint cans. He looked at me, his usual gruff expression softening. "You look like hell, son," he said. I shrugged, tried to play it off. But he wasn't having it. "Come by the house tomorrow. Your mom's worried sick." I nodded, not trusting my voice. As he walked away, he added, "Jonas hasn't been around either." That hit me hard. Was Jonas hiding? Ashamed? Or just living his life, carefree, while I was falling apart? I went to Mom and Dad's the next day. Mom hugged me so tight I thought she'd never let go. She'd made pot roast, my favorite, but I could barely eat. Dad kept the conversation light, fishing, the weather, but Mom's eyes were on me, waiting, finally. I told them a half-truth. Elise and I broke up. It's over. Mom's face crumpled, and she asked why. I couldn't say it. Not Jonas Dash. Instead, I said, she wasn't who I thought. Dad frowned, like he knew there was more, but he didn't push. Mom reached for my hand, saying, "You'll find someone better, Lukas." I wanted to believe her, but the words felt empty. That night, I finally checked my phone. Elise's messages were a mix of apologies and pleas. "I'm so sorry, Lukas. I was stupid. Can we talk? I love you." Jonas's were shorter. "I messed up. Man, let's talk." I deleted them all, but one message stuck with me, Elise saying she'd moved out of the apartment, staying with a friend. I drove there the next morning, half expecting her to still be there. The place felt wrong without her stuff. Her sketch pads were gone, her mug missing from the counter. It was my home, but it felt like a stranger's. I started sleeping there again, but it wasn't home anymore. Every corner held memories, her laughing in the kitchen, us planning the wedding on the couch. I threw myself into work harder, taking on a rush job for a client's nursery furniture. It was painful, building a crib for someone else's future when mine was gone. At night, I'd sit on the couch, staring at the walnut box I'd brought from the workshop. I couldn't open it, but I couldn't get rid of it either. Then Mike cornered me at a job site. "You gotta talk, man," he said. "You're scaring me." I broke down and told him everything. Elise, Jonas, the barbecue, the texts. He listened, didn't judge, just nodded. "That's rough," he said when I finished. "But you're tougher." His words stuck with me like a small spark in the dark. I wasn't sure I believed him, but I wanted to. I needed to start rebuilding, not just furniture but myself. The question was how, when every step felt like walking on broken glass. Living in the apartment again was like sleeping in a museum of my old life. Every drawer I opened had some trace of Elise, a hairpin, a scribbled note, a receipt from our favorite diner. I started boxing up anything that reminded me of her. But it felt like betraying her all over again. I wasn't ready to erase her completely. Even if she'd erased me, the walnut box sat on the coffee table, untouched, a reminder of what I'd lost. I'd catch myself staring at it, wondering if I'd ever finish it or if it'd just sit there, incomplete, like me. Work kept me sane, or at least distracted. I was juggling 3 projects now, a dining set, a porch swing, and a bill and bookshelf. My hands were steady when I worked, but my mind wasn't. I'd be planing wouldn't suddenly see Jonas's face, grinning like he hadn't just blown up my life. I hadn't spoken to him since Elise's confession, and I didn't plan to, but he was still out there, probably closing deals, charming clients. While I was sanding down my grief, the unfairness of it burned. Mom called every day, her voice gentle but insistent. "Come to dinner Sunday," she said. "Your dad's grilling." I knew what she was doing, trying to pull me back into the family, to fill the hole Elise and Jonas left. I said yes, but dread settled in my gut. Would Jonas be there? I couldn't imagine sitting across from him, passing the potatoes like nothing happened. When Sunday came, I drove to Mom's, my hands sweaty on the wheel. Jonas's car wasn't in the driveway, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Dinner was quiet at first. Mom kept the conversation light, talking about her garden, Dad's new fishing rod. But I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for me to open up. Finally, Dad set down his fork and said, "Lukas, you gonna tell us what's really going on?" I froze. I hadn't planned to spill it, but the weight of it was too much. Elise cheated, I said, my voice low with Jonas. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad's face hardened, his jaw tight. "Your brother," he said, like he couldn't believe it. Mom started crying, saying she'd call Jonas, make him explain. I shook my head. I don't want to hear from him." Dad just stared at his plate, like he was trying to process it. "He's no son of mine right now," he muttered. It was the angriest I'd ever heard him, and it didn't make me feel better. It just made the hole in my family bigger. Mom tried to hug me, but I pulled away, not wanting to break down. I left early, promising to call, but I needed air, space, anything to keep me from falling apart. Back at the apartment, I started looking into therapy. Mike had mentioned it once, said it helped him after his divorce. I found a counselor online, a guy who specialized in grief and betrayal. It felt weird, booking a session, like admitting I was too broken to fix myself. But I was tired of carrying this alone. The first session was over the phone, and I barely knew where to start. I told him about Elise, Jonas, the barbecue, the texts. He didn't say much, just asked how it felt to lose them. Both. I didn't have an answer, not really. It felt like losing a limb, like I was still reaching for something that wasn't there. By the end of the week, I felt a shift, small but real. Work was steady, the apartment less suffocating. I started running in the mornings, pounding the pavement until my lungs burned. It didn't fix anything, but it gave me a way to let the anger out. I still didn't know how to face Jonas or if I ever could, but I was starting to see a path forward. When I'd have to walk alone, it scared me, but it was mine. Therapy was strange at first, sitting in a quiet office, talking to a guy named Dr. Ellis who nodded a lot and wrote notes I couldn't see. I'd spend an hour spilling my guts about Elise and Jonas, then leave feeling raw, like I'd been sanded down to the grain. But it was helping, I think. He asked questions that stuck with me, like, "What do you want your life to look like now?" I didn't have an answer yet, but it made me realize I'd been living for a future that didn't exist anymore. I had to start building a new one. Work was my anchor. I finished the dining set and got a call from the client, a young couple, gushing about how it transformed their home. Their gratitude felt good, like a reminder I could still make something worthwhile. I started sketching new designs at night. Simple stuff, a coffee table, a rocking chair. It wasn't just about keeping busy. It was about proving to myself I could create without Elise's shadow over me. The walnut box was still in the apartment, but I moved it to a closet. Out of sight, not out of mind, but it was a start. Mom kept calling, her voice softer each time, like she was afraid I'd break. She'd stopped mentioning Jonas, but I could tell it was eating at her. Dad sent a text. Jonas moved to Portland for a new job. I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me was relieved he was gone, but another part was angry he got to run away while I was stuck picking up the pieces. I wondered if he'd told Elise, if they were still in touch. The thought made my skin crawl, but I didn't want to know. Not yet. One evening, Mike invited me to a game night at his place. I almost said no, but he insisted, saying I needed to get out of my cave. His house was warm, loud with his kids running around, his wife setting out snacks. We played cards, laughed at dumb jokes, and for a few hours, I felt normal, not fixed, but human on the drive home. I realized it was the first time I hadn't thought about Elise or Jonas all night. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then Jonas called. I was in the apartment, eating takeout. When his name flashed on my phone, my stomach dropped. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got me. His voice was low, hesitant. "Lukas, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I'm sorry. I want to explain." Explain what? How he'd been texting my fiancée for months. How he'd slept with her while I was asleep upstairs. I deleted the message, my hand shaking, but his voice stayed with me, stirring up the anger I'd been trying to bury. The next therapy session, I told Dr. Ellis about the call. He asked if I wanted to confront Jonas, to hear him out. I didn't know. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to ask why he'd done it, but another part was terrified of the answer. What if he said he loved her? What if he didn't care? Dr. Ellis didn't push, just said, "You'll know when you're ready." I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready, but the idea of facing him started to take root. By the end of the month, I was feeling steadier. I'd started fixing up the apartment, painting the walls, rearranging furniture. It was small, but it made the place feel less like a graveyard. I went for runs every morning now, the cold air clearing my head. I wasn't okay, not by a long shot, but I was moving. Each step, each project, each day without breaking felt like defiance. I didn't know what came next, but I was starting to believe there was a next. That was enough for now. The apartment was starting to feel like mine again, not just a museum of what was. I painted the living room a soft gray, moved the couch to face the window, and even hung a new shelf for my books. Small changes, but they helped. I wasn't tripping over memories every time I walked in anymore. The walnut box was still in the closet, and I decided to leave it there. Maybe one day I'd finish it, or maybe I'd burn it. I didn't need to decide yet. Work was picking up. A local cafe hired me to build custom benches, and the project felt good. Something public, something that'd last. I'd spend hours in the workshop, music blaring, losing myself in the rhythm of sawing and sanding. Mike started calling me the machine because I was taking on so much. I didn't tell him it was because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. But he knew. He'd drop off coffee, crack a joke, and leave me to it. I was grateful for that. Mom and Dad started inviting me over more, but it was different now. There was a hole where Jonas used to be, and we all felt it. Mom stopped asking about him, but I could see the pain in her eyes. Dad was quieter too, his usual gruff humor gone. One night, over beers on their porch, he said, "You're doing all right, Lukas, proud of you." It was the most he'd said in weeks, and it hit me hard. I nodded, not trusting my voice. They were hurting too, but they were choosing me. That meant something. I was running one morning when I saw Elise's car at the bakery where we'd met. My heart stopped. I hadn't seen her since she showed up at the workshop, and I wasn't ready now. I kept running, faster, like I could outrun the sight of her. But it brought everything back. Her laugh, her sketches, the way she'd curl up against me on cold nights. I got home, sweaty and shaking, and called Dr. Ellis. We talked about closure, about how holding on to anger was like carrying a weight I didn't need. He suggested writing a letter to Elise, not to send, but to say what I needed to. I tried it that night, scribbling pages of hurt, love, and questions I'd never ask. I burned it in the backyard. Watching the ashes float away, it didn't fix me, but it lightened the load. Jonas called again a few weeks later. I was stronger now, or at least I thought I was. This time, I answered. His voice was quiet, almost broken. "Lukas, I'm so sorry," he started. I cut him off. "Why'd you do it?" I asked. My voice steady but cold. He stumbled, said it was a mistake, that he'd been drunk, lonely, that it didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I laughed, bitter. You took everything, Jonas. He was silent for a long time, then said, I know. I hate myself for it. I hung up. I didn't forgive him. I couldn't. But hearing him admit it felt like a small piece clicking into place. Therapy kept me grounded. Dr. Ellis helped me see I was rebuilding, not just surviving. I started saying yes to more dinners with Mike's family, a hiking trip with old high school buddies. I even signed up for an art class, not because I was any good, but because I wanted to try something new, something that wasn't tied to Elise. I was bad at it, but laughing at my terrible sketches felt good, like a muscle I hadn't used in months. By spring, I was different, not whole, but stronger. I could think about Elise and Jonas without my chest caving in. I could see a future again, not the one I'd planned, but one I was building, piece by piece. Family was still messy, and forgiveness was a long way off, but I was enough for myself. And that was a start. I'd keep going, one day, one project, one breath at a time.